Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of Proof of Vision. Had an excellent conversation with Ahmed and Ramiro from Sol Labs, the CEO and the CTO respectively. Yeah, I mean, if you are a lender, a borrower, any of the above, this episode is definitely for you guys. Sol is bringing to market an omni-chain lending protocol that I think could finally crack, some of the UX problems that have plagued DeFi for a long time. Um, so we get into all that obviously. They've been building this protocol for I think 2 years now. So it's been 2 years of work, and they've really kind of left no stone unturned, in my opinion. Just to show you guys, I barely ever do this, but I'm like geeking out about this. Uh, just to show you the UI here. This is one of the most beautiful UIs that I think I have ever seen in my life. So definitely check it out. When you load the screen, there's a whole like intro, like zaps you into Soul. But this is like the level that these guys have taken it to. No stone unturned in terms of designing the UI and the UX, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So definitely encourage you guys to go check out the app. Obviously, listen to the podcast. And if you do like it, hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Take care. All right, we are live again. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Proof of Vision podcast. Really interesting conversation for you today with Sol Labs. We've got Ahmed, the CEO, and we've got Ramiro, the CTO. So we've got the full armada here, ready to unleash and spread the gospel about Sol Labs. So we're very excited. Welcome, guys. How we doing?
Doing good. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you for having us. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing to note for listeners, and I will say this again in the introduction, if you haven't listened to that, but you guys need to go check out the Sol Labs app. It is probably one of the most beautiful applications I have ever seen. So, not to pat you guys on the back too much, but you've definitely solved the design problem, for the app. It's absolutely gorgeous, guys. So, congratulations on that. But before we get to the app, let's get into your background a little bit. Ramiro, why don't we start with you? Tell us how you got into crypto, what's your background, and ultimately what made you want to join Sol Labs and build Sol.
Okay, perfect. So, well, I am Ramiro. I'm from Argentina, South America, and I have studied nuclear engineering, which is very different, like 10 years ago, I finished that and I started working on the nuclear sector for a long time. But then I moved to the financial sector, traditional finance, and also worked there in a lot of banks. But then I got interested in blockchain and I joined into this space, like I would say like 4 years ago, something like that. And from that point, I started working with Ahmed. We built products for another chains, different chains than EVM. We put products in production with a lot of money, and I fall in love with this space. Get very interested on building new stuff. So that's my journey, pretty much, I would say.
Awesome. Ahmed, how about for you, sir?
Sure. So I'm Ahmed, co-founder and CEO of Soul. I have a background in business with a degree in BA and a master's in finance. I've been involved in the crypto space for about like 8 years now. Before launching Soul, as Ramiro said, we started our first like crypto project, Haton Protocol, about 4 years ago. It is based on Multiverse X, previously called Elrond. We actually kickstarted DeFi on that chain. We built their first lending protocol, a bridge from BitTensor to Multiverse X, a liquid staking solution for both Tau and eGold, and an overcollateralized stablecoin. So our TVL peaked at more than $300 million, and our protocol has been live without like any downtime on mainnet for more than 2 years, actually. And about like 2 years ago, we started working on Sol, a solution I believe has strong potential to help overcome the current limitations of lending in a cross-chain environment. So, yeah.
Awesome. I guess just sticking with Sol ultimately, which is the reason we've all been brought together on this lovely Friday. Let's talk about Sol a little bit, and I guess maybe frame it this way before we actually talk about Sol itself. What are some of the biggest problems that you guys saw with trying to, I guess, launch an omni-chain lending protocol? Obviously, it's a big UX problem that you guys are solving for the user, but there's been some others that have tried it. I think Synonym Finance is one that comes to the top of my mind. A little bit less, lesser known, maybe a smaller protocol. But it has been tried, right? And like, what are some things that you guys think, Sol improves on that maybe the market hadn't thought of, or, maybe the tech stack just wasn't there, originally. But yeah, maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I can take a bit this answer first, but basically we know, of course, that this has been tackled by other protocols before, and most of them failed to solve this problem because it's not an easy problem at all. As we mentioned, we already solved this problem like in a single chain, the lending and borrowing single chain, and from there we brought our experience and we solved the problem cross chain. The main difference is that in cross chain you don't have atomic actions. Like borrowing is not just atomic. You have to perform an operation in multiple chains. So that complicates the whole process. But we tackled every problem one by one, and we solved all of them, being probably liquidations the most difficult one. And basically, it took us a bit of time, but then we rely on other technologies like cross-chain messages by Layer 0, Axelar, CCIP, and so on, Wormhole as well. And once we figure out everything, we build the product. And we are doing another things that are a bit different. For example, that we are not competing with other protocols. Maybe Ahmed, you want to discuss about that in the business side?
Yeah. So let's say that one of the main differences between like Sol and other project who tried to tackle like this issue is the approach that we are like taking in terms of the implementation. So Sol is following a model where it doesn't compete with existing lending protocols. So instead, what we are doing is creating like synergies with each one of them and connecting all their liquidity and unifying them, basically. So for Sol, like there isn't like really a competitor in the market because any lending protocol implemented like only on one single chain or implemented in different chains could be integrated into our ecosystem and be a part of the Sol solution, actually.
Gotcha. So, I mean, probably aggregation is probably too simple of a term, here, but like, so essentially, you're building on top of, you're building on top of and aggregating all of the liquidity and all of the lending markets across all of these chains. Now, are we talking, is this limited just to EVM, or are you guys able to take this cross, different virtual machines?
So I would say that that Sol is chain agnostic. So we could like integrate EVM chains, but we can also like expand to non-EVM ones and integrate them, actually.
Gotcha. So go ahead, Ramiro.
It is important also that to mention that we will start like with a conservative approach in which we will integrate the important chains that hold the majority of liquidity and also the most important protocols like Aave or Compound, because we trust, like we know those smart contracts have been already battle tested. They have a really good development. So we want to make sure the funds stay safe and so on. So that's very important to mention as well.
Exactly, yeah. Like the goal of Sol is not to expand, you see, like to as many protocols and as many chains as possible, but to follow like a conservative approach where we will only start with the chains where there is like the most liquidity, but also like the biggest lending protocols. And in terms of the protocols that we want to integrate, like initially, we want to start with the ones who are like following some strict guidelines and some pretty like secure process in terms of how they are managing their protocol, basically. So we don't do liquidity management. Like the user at the end is the one that chooses where he wants to supply like through Sol, but we want to make sure that only the protocols that are like following the best practices in terms of security that weren't like exploited in the past are integrated like at the beginning. And later on, like the expansion will be like managed through the governance process. Yeah, we'll follow naturally.
Right. So at the beginning, it's going to be a centralized, like curated process. Ultimately, the decision makers are the team. To decide what lending markets are available through Sol, and then eventually it'll be decentralized. I think that makes sense. From a business standpoint, especially when you're coming out of the gate. Yes, it makes sense. I think from a practicality standpoint. Now, so you mentioned, you guys have a very strict criteria. Only certain protocols will be available when you launch. Like, so what protocols are we talking about that have kind of met the criteria? Let's take mainnet for example. Like, which ones are you guys targeting?
So right now, let's say that we are like still in the process of defining which will be like the final protocols that will be integrated for the mainnet release. For sure, AVV3 and Compound will be like among those protocols and the different like EVM chains that we'll like start with, and then we will still like try to decide which ones will be like integrated during like our mainnet release. To give you like maybe some info about the current like stages. So right now we have just started our testnet, let's say campaign about 10 days ago. We have started with 5 different chains. So the testnet of ETH, Arbitrum, Avalanche, Base, and Optimism. We've integrated 4 different protocols, so AVV2, AVV3, Compound, and Venus. And yeah, everything has been going like pretty well. On that front, we have more than 85K unique wallet that is like testing the protocol, more than 500K cross-chain transactions that have been performed, more than 1.5 million operations in total. So that was like a pretty good let's say like exercise to stress test like the protocol and to make sure that all functionalities are working as expected. So yeah, quite happy about that.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. I mean, and obviously, I think you have to follow the liquidity and obviously you follow security, at the same time. We have seen, I think some competition kind of come up, in the lending space. Obviously, Aave is still very dominant. Compound's been around forever, but like, how are you guys thinking about like, some of the newer players, maybe like Morpho, for example, that kind of has a differentiated model than Aave, where they kind of, lean into these curation experts to, kind of, curate the markets ultimately and manage the risk. How do you think that aligns with maybe like your guys' own security assessment and like criteria? Obviously a little bit of a newer protocol. They're newer, comparatively to like Aave and Compound. But they are getting a lot of traction, right? And there is a lot of liquidity that's flowing into Morpho. How are you guys thinking about this?
Yes, please.
No, just from the technical point of view, it is possible to integrate all of them. There is no problem. But then, yeah, it is. It will be like we need to figure out the process that we will follow for them specifically. Like you mentioned, there are curators there. So in order to whitelist those markets, let's say, we will follow a process. To the end, it will be decided by the community. We already know. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that they can be integrated, no problem. That's the really nice thing about this protocol. Ahmed, maybe you can elaborate a bit on something else, or?
Yeah, no, pretty much like aligned with what Ramiro like has said. So for us, like the integration is a matter of a business like decision at the beginning. But then let's say that the community and like governance will be like in charge of deciding the direction through which like Sol will expand. But the most important thing is to understand that any lending protocol is compatible with our solution. Like Sol has been designed to be this flexible solution that could integrate like current, but also upcoming protocols that could be able to come up with some innovative approaches or some attractive solutions chain.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. You mentioned the liquidation part earlier as maybe being like one of the key things to solve for when you're building, I guess an omni-chain lending protocol. Can you walk us through the architecture of that at all, or like how you guys are, I guess, thinking about ensuring that liquidations take place, in a timely manner, as they need to? Tell us a little bit about the architecture there, and are you guys leaning into the liquidation processes of these individual protocols? I'm sure you are to some extent, but what else is involved, I guess?
Yeah, to start with liquidations, like to explain liquidations at the beginning is very complicated because there are many kinds of liquidations. But I think we can discuss briefly how the protocol works first, and then we can go a bit on into liquidations. So the first thing to understand is that Sol protocol um, has a position in each underlying protocol, which is only composed by the same asset. So there is a position that Sol has in Aave V3, for example, in Ethereum for the USDC token, let's say. And that position is only composed by supplying USDC and borrowing USDC. So there is no composition of assets, and there is a very, very liquidation risk. Like that position is practically impossible to liquidate. There's no such a thing. So Sol is always solvent into the underlying protocol. But then users that interact with Sol, they can form positions that are risky. They can deposit a collateral of a kind, and they can borrow another token, let's say. And when they do that, they can do it on the same chain using the same protocol. They can do it on the same chain using different protocols, or they can do it in different chains using different protocols or the same protocol, let's say. When they are using different chains, there is a controller, a smart contract that registers the position the user has in our protocol, and that controller can live in different chains depending on the user's choice. Okay. Then that controller has the information about this account, if it is healthy or not, or whatever. So liquidators, they have to monitor the positions the account has in those smart contracts. And whenever they see that there is an account that can be liquidated, they need to follow a process that has different steps depending on the accounts, let's say distribution of collateral and borrows. So they just need to repay the borrow in one chain and maybe get the collateral in another one and so on. But they can just do it. It's very similar to single chain, but it has differences because of this nature of having to send messages across different chains, basically. But it's very similar. If you collapse it to one chain, it collapses to the same process that we are all familiar with.
Gotcha. So I would imagine one of the kind of one of the go-to-market processes or sequences, right, is probably trying to familiarize these liquidators with like the Sol tech stack, trying to make sure that they're comfortable with how liquidations work, so that way they can take care of it, for you. Like, how has that process been? Has it, have you guys seen, a lot of interest from liquidators to come on board and liquidate through Sol? Maybe speak to that a little bit. Ahmed, I don't know, or Ramiro, which one of you wants to take that? But have you guys seen any kind of friction, I guess, as a result of that, or has it been, hey, we really don't care where we liquidate, as long as there's, as long as the reward or the return is good enough, we'll liquidate anywhere. Talk about that a little bit, because I don't think people realize there's not like a ton of these kinds of entities that exist in crypto, right? Generally, a lot of them are market makers. Sometimes, they're protocols. It just kind of depends, on who it is and what chain and what we're talking about. But maybe speak to that a little bit. Has the perception or the reception to Sol been positive, on that account?
Yeah, for sure. Just personally, I have received many inquiries regarding this topic, and liquidators that they want to participate. Something that is related to this is that we are going to take a conservative approach. It's not like we are going to whitelist a chain that is not being used by anyone Instead, we are going to whitelist chains that have a lot of developers already that are interested on doing this kind of stuff. My intuition is that liquidations are going to be very competitive at the end. Like probably there will be like a couple of days in which anyone can participate for sure, but then it will be very competitive, mostly in EVM because there is a lot of developers, amazing developers out there that they can handle these kind of problems, and they will compete with each other, and the solutions are going to converge to something that is very, very extremely competitive. I have seen this in many other spaces in which there are way fewer developers. Like you have way few developers, and they already compete extremely. The competition is extreme, let's say. So from our point, it's very important to be clear how the process works. Our interest is that like liquidation happen and happen as soon as possible. So we will, try to provide all the information, try to provide, I don't know, our code snippets to do it, and they will build from there. Let's say.
Gotcha. Ahmed, anything to add there before I move on?
So, Ramiro, pretty much resumed the whole approach regarding that. We received many inquiries from people who wanted to try out liquidations, build their own solution, but also from different developers who wanted to know more about how Sol is functioning to start developing their own apps on top of it. So we've been quite satisfied, I would say, with the feedback that we received about this. And in terms of liquidations too, something that we will also do is to make sure that we have our own infrastructures that will be able to monitor them and take care of them instead, in case you see no one has been able to do that in time, basically.
Gotcha. I want to shift into maybe from the user's perspective here, in terms of the things that they can do with Sol. So, if I let's say I initiate my borrow, through Sol, then I'm able to choose as a user where my debt lands. So I can choose, if I borrowed 1,000 USDC, I'm going to be able to choose out of these chains, where do I want those funds to actually sit, right? And then, obviously, I think the big unlock there is leverage, right? If I want to lever up, against, a certain position, or I want to loop, against a certain protocol that maybe just went live on that chain. Obviously, if the protocol has been whitelisted for collateral, then I can go take advantage of that. Maybe in a more seamless way than obviously bridging my funds over, finding a money market on that chain that that I'm going to work with or work on, with this leverage. But am I following this correctly? Is that kind of the user flow?
Totally. Actually, this is one of the many benefits that Sol is unlocking. I like to describe Sol as a cross-chain lending protocol aggregator. So it is built on top of existing platforms like Aave, Compound, Venus, and so on. And basically what we are doing, rather than competing for liquidity, we are connecting those lending protocols across different chains into one unified ecosystem. So you can see it as what 1inch was for Uniswap, Kyber, and other DEXs, but for lending protocols. And in practice, that means that if you deposit assets on Aave on the Ethereum chain through Sol, you can use those collaterals to borrow from, let's say, Venus on the Binance Smart Chain or any other supported protocol without needing to bridge your funds. So it means that for users, they will be able to unify their borrowing power, but they can also, as you explained, optimize the yields that they are getting, performing leverage strategies too. In practice, what it means is that if you have some USDC, what you will be able to do is to define the chain under protocol that is offering the best yields for supplying that USDC. You could supply it there, use it as collateral. Then if you're in need of borrowing some ETH, you could define on which chain and on which protocol you could get the best interest rate to take in that loan, and you could do that. And again, without having to bridge any of your asset, and everything would happen in a pretty seamless way.
Yeah. Very interesting from like an arbitrage perspective too. Like if you think, a lot of people think, and you can see it, that these markets are inefficient, right? Because in reality, if the market was completely efficient, I shouldn't be able to go, borrow for a hugely discounted rate, on X chain for the same asset, that I'm looking at maybe on L1 on ETH L1, right? But these opportunities exist, right? And they're just very hard to like see unless you're paying attention and you're doing your homework. But I think I see Sol as kind of like this unifying force where like everybody's going to be able to like see these opportunities, right? And then go execute on these opportunities, and then these spreads should shrink as a result of that, at the same time. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see, how efficient maybe the lending and borrowing space becomes as a result of products like Sol. Obviously once you guys, get through testnet, you go live, and we're off to the races. So that's definitely one of the things I think I'm excited about most is kind of like those arbitrage opportunities that only the on-chain sleuths right now are paying attention to. You're kind of going to be able to take advantage of that as maybe a more retail type user, a more casual user through a tool like Sol, which is really really interesting. So we mentioned, you guys are kind of enabling all this, using multiple, omnichain messaging layers, right? I think layer 0 is one of them. Axelar, you mentioned, CCIP. Explain how this works. Are you guys, does the protocol like default to one of those protocols, depending on what chain it is, or like how does that all work? Like how do they all work together? How are you guys all meshing them together within the protocol to make sure that the user experience is seamless?
Yeah, depending on the chain you are, like I mentioned before, like there is a controller, a smart contract that is in every chain, and that is the one that is triggering the cross-chain messages. So from one chain to another one, you just can always specify which one is the protocol that should be used. So by default, we are using layer 0, but it can be changed for whatever reason to another one. And all previous transactions, they can be delivered, and new transactions, they can also be delivered. How it works is there are some specific roles that can perform that action. Anyways, if one of them is failing, we can just default to the other one, and so on. So it's pretty simple approach, but it's very reliable. In testnet, all these protocols, they don't have the same infrastructure as they do have in mainnet. So with the huge amount of traffic that we have had in the previous days since our launch, we stress test their infrastructure. They were receiving tons of messages, and so we were able to test out our delivery system, like changing it from one to the other one and deliver all previous transactions. And it was pretty awesome, because it allows us to see if the design was properly implemented. And indeed, it was a very good idea, and it has proven to work. So yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, one of the things I found really interesting about your design from a security standpoint is kind of the layered approach with the omni-chain messaging, right? Because you see a lot of protocols that come out and kind of similar to bridges, right? Even though these cross-chain messaging I kind of think of them in a similar ilk, but like you rely on one of these, and then all of a sudden you have a centralized point of failure for your protocol. If they go down, you go down, and you're kind of cooked, at that point, especially for something like lending, right? Where you need to make sure that liquidation makes it through, or else, there's bad debt, right? I mean, there's a problem.
Yeah.
I always found it very interesting that you guys elected to kind of like, hey, we'll use them all. We'll kind of integrate them all as kind of a backup to the other, and that way, if anything does go wrong, we just, if something's going on with layer 0, we'll just shift over to XLR, and vice versa, right? Or CCIP or whatever it may be. So definitely, I think that's an interesting approach that not a lot of protocols I've taken that I've spoken with that are thinking about doing kind of cross chain or omni chain actions is just something you got to plan for the inevitable, right? Something probably will go wrong eventually with one of these, and then you've got to make sure there's a fallback, or else you end up, when multi-chain went down, I guess taking us back to a bridging, problem. When multi-chain had that problem, there were so many protocols that were cooked because of that, right? Obviously a different scenario, but again, I'm just thinking like if there was a bridge backup or the possibility of backing that up with something else, then maybe you wouldn't have the same problem. So I definitely think you guys have thought about that. I guess from a holistic point, I think you guys have thought through that pretty well.
Yeah. For us, let's say that based on the activity that we are like performing, we need to ensure that users will always be able to perform like transactions, and also like liquidations should like always happen in case they need to happen. Exactly, like to be able to avoid like any bad debt scenario. So for us, what we wanted to build is a solution that is like censorship resistant and that doesn't rely like on any technology. So we are using like layer 0 by default, but we wanted to ensure that in case anything happen, because we never know in the crypto space, like what could happen in the future, so that we have alternatives. So the possibility to pivot into a fallback system to allow all transactions to be performed and for users to continue performing like their usual like activities. And the Sol solution has been made like quite flexible in that regard, which means that if there is like a new technology that will allow us to improve the resilience of the protocol to be like even more efficient, the Sol architecture has been designed in a way that it can like accommodate that. We could be able to integrate that solution, like adapt the required like functions, but be able to integrate it into the whole like infrastructure that we are building.
Yeah, more of like a modular approach where you can plug them in, as they come up. No, it makes sense. Makes sense. Wanted to ask you guys, I guess more of a philosophical question for a second. We've seen this trend, right, where there's, I don't know. I just saw yesterday there was 4 more L1s that just came out of stealth and announced that they raised funds, right? I think the trend that we've seen, right, is there is going to be so many chains. And with every new chain, liquidity just keeps getting fragmented and fragmented and fragmented. Like, do you guys think, let's fast forward 5 or 10 years from now, do you think that we'll see, like all of these chains, like chains, just chains on chains, or do you think that they're going to, like, most people are going to aggregate around like some of, the more well-known chains, or there'll be just a few chains that survive? Like, what do you guys think? Or do you think that, we are going to continue to see 5 new chains every day for the next, 15 years. Just wanted to get your take on that. Ramiro, what do you think?
I'm so bad predicting the future that this is why we build this solution as flexible as possible in this sense. The way that if liquidity keeps fragmenting out, we can just add new chains to the protocol and new protocols as well. But honestly, yeah, that's what I think. Personally, I don't have any like I don't have any wishes. Like maybe if it yeah, one way or the other, the yeah, it's going to be decided by the market, But yeah, from our point of view, this discussion we had it internally many times, and we reached to this conclusion. Like now, let's not try to predict what's going to happen. Let's try to do it such that in any scenario we can benefit from it. Let's say.
Yeah, makes sense. Ahmed, what do you think? Do you agree with Ramiro, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that it is very difficult to predict what could happen. What I'm sure of is, you see, like in the end game, it has never been about, you see, like only one blockchain, you see, like that will be dominant. There will always be, you see, like multiple solutions that are like offering some exciting and innovative things, a lot of like benefits for different like use cases. What we are like sure of is that like currently and later on, liquidity will be like very fragmented. And what you are trying to do is to try to resolve this issue by creating like a solution that will be able to allow liquidity to get unified across those different chains and those lending protocols. This is like our mission and what we want to achieve with Sol and why we built it in this way, to be able to implement, like current protocols and current chains, but also to be able to adapt and implement, integrate upcoming chains and upcoming protocols too in the future.
It makes sense. From a user perspective on Sol, I wanted to come back to this because a question just occurred to me I didn't ask yet. So when I want to initiate maybe borrowing, against my asset, obviously you guys are integrating different lending protocols. Is the UI actually going to recommend to me where the lowest interest rate is at that given point in time for my order, I guess, right? So if I want to borrow USDC or I want to borrow ETH, will the Sol UI actually like show me the optimal path? Kind of, and again, you brought up the 1 inch example, right? Kind of what I guess the benefit of using 1 inch versus using the DEXs is it's going to optimize for you, right? It's going to show you the best path. That way, it's a better user experience for people to come through 1 inch, and then that's why they get so much volume, obviously, right? It's kind of a UX upgrade, an efficiency upgrade. I'm imagining the same thing for Sol, correct?
Not directly, but through our user experience, we are actually like facilitating the access and the comparison between like the different chains, APYs that are like being offered between like the different money markets. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen. Maybe it could be like even easier to show it like directly to you.
Yeah, you should be able to. You see, yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So this is like what the dashboard looks like. So for the users, they will be able to track, you see like their different supplied and borrowed positions here, like on this tab. They will have access to quite cool like filter to be able to navigate among like their assets. If they have, you see like a long list of them, they could like change the display of the screen to have like a more classical view and to be able to perform transactions. It's as simple as clicking, you see like either on the supply or the borrow buttons. So let's say that I'm looking to supply, you see like USDC, and I'm looking for the best place to be able to earn yields through it. So what you'll be able to do is just like select on the asset side, USDC. The result is that you have like a list of all the money markets that are like integrated for that assets. So you will have the possibility to compare between them, compare between their collateral factors too, and decide which one you want to interact with. So if you want to supply like USDC on one specific chain, same thing. You just need to select the chain that you want to do, and the money market like will be displayed. Like on Avalanche, there's like only one money market. But for example, like on Base, like on the testnet, but on Base, for example, you will be able to compare between like the compound V3, AVV3, and Venus here, like on testnet, to select like which asset you want and what you want to do with it. So same thing on the borrow side. So just like selecting the asset that you're like interested by interacting with, and you get like a full list of the available assets, their APYs, and the available liquidity in each one of them.
Yeah, it's very smooth. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to add that in the 1 inch scenario, they have to optimize for that instant only. It's just one transaction, like you're swapping. But then for lending, it's very different because the optimization is dynamic. Like you build a position, and in time, that position should be rebalanced in order to have the optimized distribution. So this implies that someone, or maybe us, we do it, it could build on top of us and do that kind of optimization. But it's a second order problem,
Yeah.
It is not only aimed, you see, like at a specific kind of users. Like it is like for anyone who wants to have like a smoother DeFi experience, whether they are, you see, like an advanced yield farmer or just like starting out their cross-chain lending activity. So if they want like to tap into the best rates or managing their positions across like multiple chains without constantly like moving their assets, Sol is giving them, you see, like one place to be able to do that. But most importantly, it is also a lending infrastructure that empowers thousands of dApps to build on top of it to leverage both the technology that we are offering, but also the liquidity that it unlocks. And this can touch, you see, like numerous sectors, including like arbitrage, yield optimization, leverage strategies, and many more. So for users, and also you see like applications. There are like too much possibilities in terms of what could be like created on top of Sol, actually.
No, that's very exciting. I think for me, the two most exciting are the arbitrage opportunities because I'm a yield farmer. That's what I do. And then the second thing is going to be like Vault products that are built on top of it. I mean, you kind of see. I mean, obviously, it's. I don't think we've seen the Omnichain version of it yet, which is what's so exciting about like Sol, But like think about how big curation has been. Like Morpho kind of, I think, like kicked everything off with like everybody and their brother is building vaults and bringing in these big curators to manage the risk now, right? But being able to do that on the Omni-chain level just unlocks other layers of yield that these vaults are kind of limited to right now, right? You're limited to the depth and performance of that single chain. And to do cross-chain operations is very complicated, and I don't think a lot of people realize how complicated it is. But having something like this, where those curators can build those vault products on top of these, or even like have an AI agent, eventually that manages the optimization, of these things using the Sol tech stack, or smart contracts that do it, or however it looks, right? Yeah, that's like the future, right? And that's the exciting part. Let's talk about the governance a little bit and how you guys envision that rolling out and how that looks. Obviously, probably in the form of a token. That's not as much what interests me as much as I think like, is the DAO going to control who gets onboarded to Sol Protocol event? We mentioned this at the beginning, but that's going to be DAO controlled. Is that how I'm thinking about this, right? Walk me through the DAO a little bit and what the functionality of the governance process is and what they're in charge of.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
So you want
go on first, and then I can follow up.
Okay, so just from the technical point of view at the beginning, of course, there will be multi-sig and then a governance smart contract that will be based on the token, and it will be set as the admin of the protocol in that sense. So, but then there are many functions here. Some of them require rapid action, like and those will be the guardians, which are very common in other protocols and are also multi-sig. But then the other things that you are mentioning, they require conversation, like discussion with the public, so they can understand the full concept, and then they can take a decision based on governance. So yeah, Ahmed, just if you want to add something for that.
Yeah. So initially, like the foundation will be the one defining, you see, like which protocols, which chains will be integrated at the beginning, but then like the whole expansion and the development of the Sol protocol will be like in the hand of the DAO. So they will be deciding after like many meticulous like discussions on which chain Sol like should expand to, which lending protocols should be integrated, while taking into consideration all the risk factors and the measures to be able to protect like the whole Sol infrastructure. And the DAO will also be responsible on how the revenue of the protocol like will be managed and redistributed among the different like money markets. So one of the important modules that we have like through Sol is what we call like gauges and emissions. So the revenue that Sol is generating through its multiple streams of income will be used to buy Sol tokens from the open market and then like incentivize the different money markets to attract like suppliers. And the DAO will be responsible of defining where and how much of the revenue will be distributed on each money market, basically. So they will have like a pretty big role to play constantly, actually, to be able to manage the evolution and the maintenance of the protocol. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love, especially at the beginning, right? Like I think a lot of people are focused on like rev share tokens now, and they're like, oh man, everybody wants revenue distributed to token holders, and yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously, but I really am a firm believer in like reinvesting the revenue into like growth, especially at the beginning until you reach a certain inflection point. That revenue is better spent, expanding the protocol or attracting, new lenders and borrowers on a new chain or a new money market, probably for Sol than just paying out that revenue to token holders at the beginning, right? And so I just wanted to say, like, I agree with that, methodology, like, wholeheartedly. Um, Now we mentioned like the voting, on the gauges. So whenever somebody says gauges to me, I automatically think of Curve, or one of these protocols that has like these vote gauges. Um, Talk to me about the voting power a little bit. Is it just simply like, you stake your tokens, or do you actually have to commit and vote lock them for a certain amount of time? How does that work?
I think that's not defined at the moment. It can work. We
Mm.
have a couple of implementations already. We also have developed in the past, like I think, very innovative governance systems for other products,
Hmm.
and it's just a matter of decision now. So I think it's not fully. We will see which one is the best approach we see fit for this. But I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
But for sure, like what it will not include is mechanism that would like imply locking like tokens for multiple years. Actually,
Gotcha. Yeah, that that makes sense. Yeah, I think the 4 year lock. Although I think the Curve founders like come out with some interesting writings lately about vote lock versus burning. But anyway, yeah, no, I mean I agree with that. I think 4 years is a little too long. Especially, I mean 4 years might as well be like 20 years. 4 years in crypto is like 20 real years in my opinion. It's crazy. So yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how that looks and how that unfolds. But yeah, definitely think I'm bought into like the economic model, that you guys have thought about for the token and for what you're doing with the fees. So yeah, I mean, it kind of creates a scenario where depending on how you do it, you're especially on the gauges, for like bribe markets to be built, to bribe, sole voters, to direct emissions to certain pools or to certain chains. So it kind of becomes like an interesting scenario. Obviously, I don't think you guys are building this, but like for somebody to build that, almost like that for Convex or somebody to come in and implement, Sol, for token holders and for voting would be really, really interesting to see, down the line. Um, yeah, no, it's exciting, guys. It's exciting stuff you're building.
The revenue model that we have is like we can incentivize markets or chains, for example, that we want to have users, uh, but that can be incentivized like just if you participate, you get rewards. But
Mm.
also we have this concept of you get rewards as long as you are a token holder. Like it's not like if you are only a token holder, you need to participate in the
Yeah,
protocol
yeah, you got to be an active
to get
participant.
rewards. Yeah,
Yep,
or it depends. It's very flexible in that sense as well. So
yep. No, I agree with that as well. Yeah, because to me, it just kind of becomes like a, for Soul, and obviously you guys are being very conservative at the beginning, with what chains and what you're implementing. But you look at something like Barachain, for example, right? Like how much borrow volume is there on these Barachain money markets, right? Like I think it's significant, especially if you look at the growth of like something like Dolomite, for example, over on Barachain where they've kind of eclipsed, the $1 billion mark finally. But it's like those kind of opportunities, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how like the Sol DAO thinks about those things and how quickly maybe those things get implemented. Because then you can capture, some of these opportunities. Like if Barachain's doing an airdrop, or like let's say Monad's coming out soon and they're doing this airdrop, and everybody's trying to figure out how do I get exposure. It's usually like the money markets that spark a lot of that, right? A lot of those strategies, a lot of that exposure, for something like Sol to be able to kind of like build on top of that in a timely manner is what I think about, right? Obviously being safe, but
yeah,
that's kind of the trade off with DAOs, right? It's the trade off with DAOs is like, you can't move as quickly versus, so Aave obviously they don't need to, but like they don't move as quickly as maybe Morpho does because Morpho has a different design and they don't have to rely on the DAO. They just rely on a curator. So it's a different model a little bit, right? But, so it'll be interesting to see like that balance that the Sol DAO is able to strike, between, being quick and being safe. That's always the trade-off, right? Um, but no, this has been great, guys. Go ahead, Ramiro.
No, so I'm happy that we are kickstarting these kind of conversations because up to this point, the conversation was much more about implementation of the protocol itself, but
Yeah,
now it's more about management of that. So it means that we finalize like the biggest part of development. So now, yeah, all these topics that you are mentioning are going to be in our priority list. How to manage all this technology that we have built.
yeah. It's like you worry about developer problems, and then all of a sudden you have to worry about like people problems. It's the best way to think about it. But no, it's been great, guys. I think it's probably a good place to wrap. Been a great conversation. Learned a lot, about what you guys are doing. Is there anything I missed or anything you guys want to highlight maybe for users to take action on? Obviously, you've got your test net, but is there anything that you wanted to say to the users maybe before we sign off here? Ahmed, we'll come over to you first.
I think it was like a very good conversation because we were able to actually like tackle the different like aspects of Soul, how it is working, like who is it for, what problem like it is solving. What I would like recommend to users is to try out like the application, to test it out, get like familiar with it, to share like their feedback with us, for developers to contact us in case like they need any assistance and they have like ideas in terms of product that could be built like on top of it. So we are like always here and ready like to assist and help, especially if it's in relation with Soul and some product like being built like on top of it. So yeah, thanks a lot like for having us. Actually, it was a very good chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, from my side, I mean, I think you ask a very nice question, like very good questions that went deep into the product. So I think we cover pretty much everything. So happy to be here, happy to explain a bit and share the protocol with everyone. Nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for users, if you're listening to this podcast, definitely check out our show notes. We'll have links to, obviously where you can find Soul, where you can find Ahmed and Ramiro, and also check out Alia Research. We will be coming out with various educational pieces of content, regarding Soul Labs and what they're building. So obviously, be on the lookout for that, so you can leverage that and kind of be more efficient with your time. And yeah, other than that, we'll see you guys on the next episode of Proof of Vision. Thanks, everybody.